I do. I love all of it. I just want to say that because, one of the questions I have is any lead a bad lead,
No,
right?
not if you have your end goal in mind at all times, there's no lead
Mhm.
that is a bad lead.
I think, Patrice, we're all ready to go. We should be live in the Facebook
Yeah.
and we're recording here. So we are ready to roll in the Meaningful Ideas Trading Club for this week. And happy to have you all joining in. It's March 13, 2025. Meaningful Ideas Trading Club is a place to show up and share ideas on health, wealth, and relationships. And today we're lucky to be joined by Derek Dombeck, who will be coming in here shortly and joining us on a conversation that's going to be pretty expansive. We're going to get into real estate, creative deal structuring, business growth, and a whole number of other areas. Derek, welcome into the Meaningful Ideas Trading Club. And we're so happy to have you here today. And thanks for setting this up and taking time for us. So, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me and letting me spread
All
all
right.
kinds of lies and debauchery about real estate. It's great.
All right. We are happy to have you here. So, Derek, we're going to go and really get down to the heart of the matter today. And I know that you have a great passion for business growth. You're an author, and I just have a ton of questions. And my first one for you is if I were to just ask you, Derek, if you lined up your time, okay, and you looked at like your main buckets, if you got them down to three, um, what would the three things be that are most important to you? And then I kind of want to go back and see how you allocate your time because what you folks are going to hear about Derek is he's got quite a bit going on, and I want to know how he does it all. So let's start
Um,
there.
yeah, for sure. Well, from the business side of things, I believe everybody gets sucked into their own world of overworking and sometimes I'm still guilty of that. So I'll say what my goals are and I need to get back to that too. But some days we still gotta do whatever it takes. But the goal is to live a vision of having the personal life you want first and then building a business that fits within the time that's left. And most of us entrepreneurs work, and our friends, family, relationships, that it's secondary. And
Mm-hmm.
um, how many entrepreneurs tell themselves, "Well, I'm doing all this, so someday I'll be able to reap the rewards. Someday may never come." So that's really important to me is just living a vision-led life. From the business side, it also helps steer away from shiny object syndrome when you have a clear vision of what you want in your life, both personally and business. And I don't know if that's really three things, Kyle, but that's
That's two
that's
good
the
ones to start with. It's good. I like
yeah.
it. Yeah, guys, so Derek's involved, like I said, real estate, creative finance, business growth, flipping homes, wholesaling, real estate. He's been involved in lending, private investments. He's been a speaker, he's an author, and the co-founder of a group called Generations of Wealth. So I'd like to kind of get into all of that with you, Derek. Where are you calling in from today? Where do you operate out of? Where's home base?
I'm in central Wisconsin, just a small little town near Wausau, and it's always been home. And but not necessarily there all the time. We do a lot of traveling and hosting our events. So last week I was in Dominican Republic hosting a mastermind. 2 weeks before that, we were hosting a conference on a cruise ship for a bunch of real estate investors. And but home base is always central Wisconsin.
That sounds a lot of fun. To travel for these masterminds and learning on a cruise ship. I think everyone would sign up for that. Um, and and what was the bug? What got you started in this entrepreneurial world and real estate world?
I, you know, to be honest with you, I never really was raised in an entrepreneurial um, family. I was raised
Hmm.
in a blue collar family, worked construction, same job that my dad did right out of high school or shortly thereafter out of high school. And but I bought my first property when I was 21 years old, and it was a fixer-upper property with 20 acres of land right next door to where I grew up. And so over time, with my sweat equity, I was able to build up a nice home with a bunch of extra equity in it, and I knew I could do that just from the work standpoint. I needed the financial education to back that up. So a few years later, late night infomercial comes on back when that was common on TV. Started going to some seminars, and I dove headfirst like I always do. I'm definitely a ready, fire, aim type of person. So my first month in business, I had two duplexes under contract in Wausau, and I
Wow.
contracted to build two spec homes in Florida.
Wow. Okay.
And didn't have a plan for any of it. So
This is all from from seeing this late night television ad?
absolutely. Went to I went to a couple of weekend seminars, so I was
Sure.
an expert at that point, Kyle. What could go
Right.
wrong?
Right.
You know?
Right.
So, but we built up, my wife and I, at the at that time, we're both employed. We had great credit. Banks were fighting over us, so we built up a pretty fast portfolio using bank financing. And then the nice crash of '07 hit, and we got taken down hard. And
Really? Wow.
we had built up about a $4 million portfolio in the first 3 years of our business, and then we watched it go bye bye.
Wow.
So that's when, you know, we had a choice, either tuck our tail and quit, or
Mm-hmm.
figure out a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And through all that experience, I now publicly call that the biggest blessing, or one of the better blessings in my life, was losing everything, because
Wow.
I now learned how to do things alternatively, to buy and or control property creatively. Banks are still an option, but I believe they are a second or third option. I've actually not used the bank to buy an investment property in 14 years.
Wow.
Um,
That's crazy.
and never say never, but I don't have
Sure.
much desire to use a bank.
Yeah.
Um,
That comes out of that experience that you had working with the banks in the past.
yeah, well, the experience was I had no control over my business.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I think that people don't take the time to learn the other methods, the alternative methods, and they take what could be the easy route with a bank. And there's a place for banking, no doubt about it.
Sure.
Um, but when you have other tools in your toolbox, now you've got a lot more ways that you can help people, a lot more ways you can do deals. And if the bank is the right choice, great. But if it's not your only choice.
Wow. I think we could spend some time on that. Can you tell us first, what was that when you went through that market crash? I just like to kind of get into that a little bit. You mentioned that when you started, you and your wife had employment. So were you working? Were you W-2 employees at the time that that happened as well?
Luckily, yes.
Okay.
I was in 2006, I was very close to leaving my job,
Sure.
but I did not pull the trigger on it. And I mean, fortunately, we had decent W-2 income, and our credit was shot. We had 8 active foreclosures against us at one period of time, which was all the Florida real estate that we'd built up.
Mm,
But the one thing, and the huge thing I learned from all of this, I was dealing with 3 community banks in the central Wisconsin area, and then I was dealing with mortgage brokers for all of my Florida stuff. Well, of course, the mortgage brokers, they all went belly up, and everyone I had communication with on all the Florida transactions either ran away or got fired, or you name it. I mean, there was some dramatic deals down there that involved the FBI. There was a deal where the president of a construction company that was fraudulently taking money off of all of our construction loans and sending it to a non-extradition island got shot and
wow.
killed in alleged robbery.
Wow.
I mean, I had all kinds of drama going on in my life
Yeah.
at that point, because everybody was pointing the finger at everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
But my local banks, I still had relationships. So even though we had 8 active foreclosures and we were in the toilet on our credit, I called a meeting with the bank president and my commercial loan officer, and I said, this is what nobody does. Instead of pointing the finger and running away, I called the meeting. I said, this is what's going on. This is what we're going to do to solve it. Hang in there with us if you can.
Hmm.
Sometimes they can't. The regulators, the board, whatever, won't allow it. But we had one of those three banks that said, yeah, we'll hang in there with you.
Really?
And so, because I had 3-year commercial loans and, they were going to come due and I needed them to be rewritten. And so I started to learn how important it is to know how to communicate with people. And I actively started studying anything I could get my hands on, books, back then CDs, right? Uh,
Sure.
just anything about sales, negotiations, know how to talk to people because I had this aha moment in sometime in 2008 that when that banker said, we really appreciate you coming in and doing this. Nobody does this,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
So what that led to is years of taking notes on every conversation, whether they were mental notes, maybe Tim and I were having a conversation, and then I left that conversation. I'd go back to my car and I'd write down what did Tim say? How did I react? What did I say? How did he react? And I started recording my phone calls and going back and listening to them.
Really?
And over a period of years, I became, very good at reading people and knowing how to lead a conversation, which is all a negotiation is, um, to a conclusion that makes sense for all of us without manipulating people,
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
certainly it's easy to do if you know how. But that's all about morals and ethics, right? And so at this point, I've gotten much, much better over the years at raising money, doing creative deal structures, teaching people because I got way better at negotiating. I got way better at um, leading conversations.
Wow. I mean, that's pretty impressive right there. I mean, and just to take the time to do all of that and these recordings and listening and the communication, what were some of the things that you did off the bat that you would say kind of, supercharged your communication skills? Were there certain books, thought leaders, people that you followed that really kind of got you into that stratosphere?
Yeah, I don't really have a lot of books that I recommend to people because I took small pieces from a lot of different sources, but the
Mhm.
one I do recommend is by Orrin Claff, which is called Pitch Anything. And then Orrin Claff had a follow-up to that, which was called Flip the Script. And those books, and you should listen to them or read them in order. Um, it's all about frame control, and frame control is very, very high on my priority list when I'm in any kind of conversation.
Mhm.
Um, Beyond that, for me, what I tell people, like the short version, is I need to figure out as quickly as possible the personality type of who I'm interacting with.
Sure.
And then once I figure out, are you analytical? Are you a driver? Are you more social conscious? I need to make sure that everything that I say, do, my body language, everything is done in a way that you're going to hear it, not just listen to it. So the starting point of that is you need to know what's your personality type. I'm very much a driver. I will make quick decisions. I still want the data to back it up, you know, later, but I can make quick decisions. I can talk fast. I don't need a lot of information. If I am talking to Sean St. Clair, for example, who I'm going to profile because I know he's an attorney, he's probably a little more analytical. Well, if I talk to Sean in a manner that he's not really hearing me because it's too fast or I'm not backing it up with details or data, then that negotiation is doomed from the start. Okay. And every time I say negotiation, I really just mean social interaction.
Hmm.
That's all that
Right.
is. So now, if I already know what somebody's personality type is, I'll start right from the beginning. And if like I've heard Sean speak, so I know a little background on him. So I would have a little preemptive plan on how I would approach him versus Tim or Angie or Patrice we've never met before, right? Well, now that I mentioned a few more names on my screen, that's another challenge. When I'm publicly speaking or teaching a group, I have to try and do things and say things in a way that are going to touch everybody's personality types. and that's all very much a conscious decision at all times. For me is so you guys notice I just said your names and you looked up a little bit, right? I'm watching your reactions. I'm watching your body language. Oftentimes on Zoom, people don't want to have their cameras on. So now you can only do it by listening to their voice. All of these things factor in. And and I believe that once you speak in a way that people actually hear you, that is a huge part of the battle.
I just love even just calling it out. Like everyone's attention gets like grabbed by that, and they're like, "All right, okay, now I'm like engaged," and this person is a master of this. It does take quite a bit of work to do that, and then just studying and analyzing people. So let's go back to I want to your topic. You talked about a bank, right? And you kind of described that as maybe the easy financing, um, and maybe the creative financing. I don't know if we called it more difficult. Maybe easier to learn is probably the maybe is that a way of saying it that the bank financing is easier to understand than the creative financing? Or what do
Um,
you mean by easy?
it's all relative. If you've got, I say easy because if you've got good credit, you've got good employment, W-2 income, you may be able to just go to a bank and they are quick to give you a loan. Okay. Now it's not easy for everybody. If you've got
Hmm.
bad credit, you're self-employed, then there's definitely much more challenges. So for me, easy doesn't always mean correct. Um, in a creative deal structuring, I would like to define what to me is creative.
Right.
Okay. So buying a property subject to existing debt, leases, options, seller financing, whether it be land contracts or them, carrying back notes and mortgages. I don't consider any of those creative. Does anybody have any different opinion on that?
Let's run through them again. Give me some of those examples. You just gave us about 5 or 6 different
Okay.
examples. So you said buying
Subject
two subject to debt was
sub
one,
yep,
right?
subject to leases with options,
Okay.
straight options, bank or I'm sorry, seller financing, whether it be the seller carrying a promissory note secured by a mortgage or a land contract.
Hmm.
Um, those are oftentimes the buzzwords that,
Sure.
especially sub two, right? That's
Okay.
that's currently in a very big buzzword, and that's Sean's world. He hears that all the time, right? That's creative financing. No, it's not. That's just a way of financing. What's creative is when you use these alternative strategies to solve a problem. Okay. So I'll give you a quick story. And by the way, in negotiating, storytelling is huge because you overcome people's objections before they ever voice them by telling the stories a proper way. Okay. So you got a little lesson there. Okay, so I had a transaction one time, and this woman's name was Jan Smith. Jan needed to go out of state relatively quick due to her grandson was sick.
Hmm.
She was 2 months behind on her mortgage at the time. She needed a retail price for her house, and ultimately she needed $10,000 cash in her hand immediately. So I ended up taking over her debt, subject to her first mortgage, and catching up the payments. Gave her $10,000 cash. She carried back the remainder of the sale price on a promissory note at, I believe it was $200 a month. We worked that in based off the cash flow from a rent and at 0% interest, which came out to about 6 years of payments. And then I needed to do about a $5,000 cleanup on this property. And I was going to put a tenant in the property on a lease option. Okay. So I needed about $20,000. I needed to put five into the property, 10,000 in her pocket, catch up her existing mortgage, and close the property. So I needed about 20 grand. So I'm very nosy with what my friends have, especially in their retirement accounts. So I called my friend Dan, said, "Hey Dan, I need $20,000 for this deal. here's the numbers, here's the projections, here's the rents, what I think it's going to sell for on a lease option. And we did a participating note. So Dan gets 6% interest only payments quarterly in his IRA. And in that particular deal, he got 20% of the upside
Mm.
when the property sold. Okay. So let's go back to the creative side, Kyle. How many different strategies were used in that one deal?
Yeah, it's got to be like four or five. I'm counting.
So we went subject to the first mortgage, seller
Hmm.
carryback,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Ultimately a lease option to a tenant, and then private money on a participating note. So that's four different strategies.
Hmm.
That is what I consider creative deal structuring. So fast forward 2 years, the tenants exercised their option, went and got new financing, bought the house outright from me. The original bank got paid off that I had taken the debt subject to. Jan Smith got paid off. My Dan, my investor, he was getting his 6% payments on a quarterly basis, and then he got 20% of the net profits at the end, and everybody got exactly what they wanted.
Nice.
And and
Everyone
by the
understands
way,
that, right? Can
by the
recite
way,
that
I
back.
I was in a deal with zero cash. So what was my ROI? Infinite,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's
Still not speaking English to me, bro. I'm just saying.
where along the timeline, Derek, was that deal done in your world, right? So kind of from beginning investor to where you are
Oh,
today.
that deal was pre-COVID.
So how
Probably
many years in, so
20,
at that point, you're how many years into this
I
real
started in
estate?
2003. So
Yeah.
that deal was probably 2019, 2018. Um,
How many
and I
times
used,
had you done a deal like that before, right? Like that compounding like ability to do that and get comfortable with that structure. That obviously was not your first time.
no, it wasn't my first time, but I think more important than how many you did, it's who you can reach out to help you answer
Yeah.
those questions,
Yeah.
right? Because I can teach anybody, in this group about options and about sub two and about all these different strategies. But until you're in a deal,
Hmm.
at least for me, it doesn't sink in.
Hmm.
So the key point is having the network. I don't have to have all the answers. I just need to know somebody that does have the answers,
Right.
right? If I'm going to do a sub two, I'm going to call Sean and say, Sean, what do you think about this? But I may not have all the answers from Sean. He might be really good on that, but he's a little weak on options, maybe. I don't know. So I want to have two, three, four people in my network that I can run this deal past and say, hey, here's what I'm trying to accomplish. What are you hearing and what am I missing?
Hmm.
And after you do that time and time again, it becomes secondhand nature. It's now when somebody calls, uh, I mean, this afternoon I have four leads on my calendar, so four different property owners I'm going to talk to, and every conversation, by the way, leads to a discussion on alternative or creative deals. And I'm trying not to bounce around, Kyle, but when I think of something I think is going to be useful for you guys,
Yeah, go jump into it.
people ask me, well, how do you market for creative deals?
Hmm.
You don't. It's the exact same marketing you do for buying a property cash. You get the lead either in person or on the phone, and that's when the proper conversation leads to the structure.
What tell me about these leads. What first off, are you looking for these leads? Are people finding you at this point? How are you finding these who's?
We spend a fair amount of money each month. My team is made up of about four people that
Hmm.
are constantly putting marketing out via social media,
Yep,
direct mail. I mean, all the common stuff
sure.
we do.
And what are
I
you
don't
looking for?
Anybody that's got a challenge that I can solve. I
Yeah,
don't have a real defined buy box like many people do, but
sure.
I do business statewide, and I'll buy commercial, I'll buy residential. Um, so I don't really try and narrow down. I want to get people on the phone and then make a deal.
Hmm.
So my team, their job is to get people on my phone and I go from there. And you know what? Sometimes the leads themselves aren't that good. You know, I don't know if any of you have ever tried to raise private money, but if I get somebody on the phone, um, and I'll give you a little elevator pitch you guys can use after I describe this. But if I get somebody on the phone and I know that it's really not a lead that's going to go anywhere,
Right.
I'm in control of the conversation. I'm frame controlling at all times. I'm going to flip the script and take them a new direction. So a few years ago, um, well, I co-owned a hard money lending company for 10 years, and my partner bought me out of that a little over a year ago. But we were always raising money, and to this day, I'm always raising money. I do everything or almost everything with private money, right? So I had this seller on the phone, and within the first 5 minutes, I knew I was never buying that house. It was retail ready, beautiful house, great neighborhood. He was looking for retail minus what he would have to pay commissions to an agent.
Okay.
So I just asked him, I said, hey, I already knew he didn't have any debt on the property. That was a previous question he had answered. I said, what are you going to do with the money when you sell the property? What kind of investments do you currently have? So we started a discussion about investments. And I said, I run a private lending company, which he already knew because I explained to him when I buy cash, I use private money. And so within about 5 minutes, I got him to agree to allow me to follow up with him in the future. Now, this was in April of that year. So I said, you mind if I call you August 1st and just see if you sold the house? And maybe if you did, we could talk about you investing in my fund.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, yeah, that'd be fine. So I set a calendar reminder. I called him August 1st. He was under contract closing August 6th.
Mm.
This was a $350,000 house.
Okay.
He closed August 6th. And the second week of August, he placed $300,000 in our fund
Wow.
on a dead lead that 99% of
Right.
people would have just hung up the phone and walked away from.
Sure.
So again, when you know how to lead the conversation, you can raise money. And even if you don't get that house or you don't raise money or you don't get anything out of it,
Mm-hmm.
always leave value because
Right.
that's how you get the referrals. That's how you'll get a call 2 years from now and be like, yeah, Angie told me to call you. You helped her out. I don't remember Angie. Sorry, Angie, but I wouldn't remember you. Right. But the fact that I left enough value that Angie is telling somebody else to give Derek a call to help you,
Right.
that's a goal in every
Word of mouth
conversation.
is really important when it comes to,
Absolutely.
communicating
100%.
and sales.
Yep. So here's my elevator pitch. I promised you this is how I get people to open up and let them know there's alternative ways that we can help them, which ultimately, after you do this properly, every question you ask them moving forward, they should not get offended by. So I would just simply say, Kyle, we buy houses in several different ways. All cash is not a problem, but that's usually my lowest offer. If that doesn't work for you, we can look at taking over your debt if you have debt. If you don't, we could make payments to you over time. Or in some cases, we just lease the property and buy it later, which is usually with like landlords that are trying to offset capital gains taxes, things of that nature. So I'd say all of that to you, Kyle, just so you know, I'm going to ask you some questions that most people probably wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to just know, is that okay with you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, it is great. Now, and pitch. Now, everything I ask Kyle moving forward about the house, the debt, everything we need to know, he's going to feel more comfortable answering. And if he doesn't, if I say, well, Kyle, do you have any debt left on the property? By the way I said that, the tone I said it, and the words I used are very important. If I say, Kyle, do you have any debt left on the property? Versus, Kyle, what do you owe on the property? Or
Mm-hmm.
what do you owe on your house? Do
Mm-hmm.
you have a mortgage? Right?
Right. You're
Like,
just checking boxes, right?
right. So if you say it in a different
Right.
way, different words, it's softer. But let's just say Kyle was in a bad mood that day, and I said, hey, Kyle, do you have any debt left in the property? And he's like, well, what's that to you?
Yeah. Right.
Well, I'm
Right.
sorry, Kyle, but remember a couple minutes ago I told you we buy houses in several different ways. This is one of the things
Right.
that I'm trying to figure out so I can help you.
Right.
And then Kyle calms down. He's like, oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah, now that makes sense, right?
Right.
But it's all set up you want to try and do that within the first 2 to 5 minutes of a conversation. Let them know all the different ways that I can help you.
Right,
And it'll
Derek, I
make the
love
rest
this.
go
I,
smoother.
I love it because you're kind of speaking my language, and that I'm similar to you in this, that I just take information from all sources
Mhm.
and try to put my own style on it, right? And so there's not just, as you said, one person that I would listen to or follow, but the the conversation that you're describing, um, that happens in this process reminds me of someone that I recently listened to, and this person described it as it's therapeutic. And that was the best description that I had heard yet of how that conversation goes with a lead, whether the person is contacting you. Um, I don't know that you do any direct contacts yourself, but the whole point of that conversation, like you said, is to provide value. It's to listen, to learn, and that person, as you're saying, there's a different tonality to use. Is almost like your body language that is disarming to that person, that allows them to feel comfortable sharing information that maybe to a family member or friend, they might even be embarrassed to say, yeah, I have debt on that property, right?
Yeah.
Like debt is generally considered not good. So I don't want to tell you I have debt. But if you do it in the right way and it's therapeutic, and I think the importance of it is that that feeling is carried through all the way through the process, right?
Well,
Yeah.
Kyle, if I were sitting with you at the kitchen table and you were in default and you were losing your house, okay, and I'm sitting there looking at you eyeball to eyeball, and I said, Kyle, listen, I am not here to judge you. In fact, in
Yeah.
2007, I had 8 foreclosures against me at one time. I know the emotions you're going
That is
through,
crazy.
and I'm
Yeah.
here to help you. I I do that. I bring my real life into it. I'm not ashamed of that. Like this is how I learned how to help you because I went through it and I'm not judging you.
Hmm.
Same thing, my father passed away 15 years ago this month. If I'm dealing with somebody that it's an estate or
Hmm.
probate or there I'm not manipulating them by being empathetic and saying,
Hmm.
"Listen, Patrice, I'm so sorry you lost your mom. I lost my dad 15 years ago. I know how hard that was on my mom and
Hmm.
it there's nothing wrong with that, but that's where most people just try to be all about themselves, right? I got to get this deal at these numbers for me. That it's all I. You will very seldom hear me say anything about what my goals are or my company's goals are
Hmm.
when I'm negotiating with somebody. I'm
Hmm.
focused 100% on them.
Hmm.
Internally, yes, I know what I need to hit, but I don't need to voice that unless they straight up ask. If somebody asks me, well, what's your profit margin? No problem. This guy's clearly a driver, and so am I, and we're just gonna go at it. It's gonna be fun,
Hmm.
you know.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's about knowing your audience. There's just some really good, some key things that you're saying in here, guys. I think we can all learn from. Um, I also like what you're saying though, that it has to be genuine, um, without manipulation, right? Because there is a difference with that. How
Yeah.
how does somebody tell the difference? Have you ever
Well,
been manipulated?
I was manipulated to come on this podcast, but I'm glad I did, you know.
I bet Jesus shocked.
I was like, hey.
um, we've all been manipulated, right?
Yeah.
And how do you know you've been manipulated when you walk away from the closing table and you're not happy? You've been manipulated. Closing table is metaphorical. This could be in anything, right? The dating world, with your kids, your spouse.
Right.
Like, by the way, that's the most fun about learning how to negotiate properly is you can practice every day, all day
Hmm.
in circumstances that don't matter what the results are. If your child's bedtime is 8:30 and they're going to bed at 9, who's winning that negotiation?
Hmm.
Not you,
Hmm.
right? Go practice this type of stuff when the results are not crucial. Go try and get an upgrade at a hotel, right? Or a rental car or whatever. All these that's where you practice this. But yeah, you'll know when you're manipulated if you walk away and you're not happy with the transaction and you just feel icky, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Now, I'm not saying that every seller is going to be skipping out of the closing table, kicking their heels in the air, but they shouldn't feel like you took advantage of them.
Hmm. Yeah. Is so have you discovered anything that, for our audience, if, you're in a situation like that, you're in a funnel, so to speak, you're in a conversation. How do you tell the difference between someone who's being genuine that is interested in a good outcome for you versus just what's best for them or their company?
Well, my personality type is very direct. So if
Hmm.
I feel like somebody's doing that to me,
Hmm.
it's fun for me to mess with them.
Hmm.
So I'm gonna just mess with them. I'm gonna
Yeah,
call them out, or I'm gonna keep playing the game and then mess with them at the end when they're trying
sure.
to close me. But
Yeah.
that's for me, that's a game, right?
And,
And that's what it becomes, by the way. When you're really good at this, it
hmm.
becomes a game,
Hmm.
and it's super fun.
Right. Um, it's interesting, Derek. I was contacted, it was a cold call from someone that was interested in a property that I was involved in, and I was really caught off guard by the conversation. And I wasn't quite clear on who this person represented. And they started asking kind of some of these questions that I thought, you know, number one, how did I get on this phone call with you? Right? Like, I don't know you. How did I get on this call? And number two, where are these questions coming from? Where is this going? Right? And it took some time to kind of understand and rework the conversation to get back to it. The good thing was that this person is someone that I'm still working with today. And that conversation was probably 2 years ago. Um, and that person took some risk in doing that and just making the direct call. But during the entire conversation, when I had hard questions for this person and kind of wanted to mess around a little bit with him, right? Because I felt like, hey, wait a second, how did I get on this call? I feel like I'm a target here, so to speak. And I started asking these hard questions, and he just hung in there. And he was like totally empathetic about it and was like, hey, I get it. I get it. Um, can I get back on your calendar? Can I call you 90 days, something like that? And I was like, yeah, sure. Right. Give me a call in 90 days. And he did. Right. And he did. And now I knew who he was. And even though that first conversation wasn't perfect, the second one and the third and the fourth and everyone since has been. And you're right. There's just something about listening, trying to figure out the pain points. I just love that. You must hear like 100 pain points a day where people you're trying to solve their problem for them. That's the creative part you're talking about, right? Like, how do I solve
Definitely,
this?
definitely. And it becomes natural. Like I don't even consciously think about it anymore that often, but certainly it took a long time to become that. And this is one of the things that really is a pet peeve of mine, right? People will go out and buy, guru courses and all these things because they all want this really fast. So I use wholesaling as an example, right? I'll go buy a wholesaling course for $10,000, or in fact, I'll just go local and I'll hire Jason Lund to teach me how to wholesale. Great. And every wholesaler says it's a numbers game, right? Every guru says numbers game. You put out 10,000 pieces of mail and you're going to get a 0.67% return on people that acknowledge that mail or contact
Hmm.
you back. So now you've got that many calls and you just keep the script. Here's your script. Just say the script every time and
Right.
eventually you'll get a contract. Okay. Okay. To me, that is absolutely asinine.
Mm.
If I want to send out 10,000 letters or even 10,000 postcards, that's $5,000 a month. And then I'm going to get let's call it a 1% response. So I'm going to get 100 people that respond to that. And probably 25 to 50% are going to be take me off your effing list.
Sure.
So now I'm down to 50. And I got to talk to 50 people to get one deal because I'm using a script and I don't actually give a shit what they need. I'm just
Right.
looking at it for me.
Right.
Well, I would much rather have the same number, 100 leads in a month from a fraction of the mailings by doing that properly. And now I've got less people because I marketed properly to begin with. I'm not just this shotgun approach.
Right.
So I have less people saying, take me off your list. But now I'm empathetic to them. I can close. I mean, my average close is 1 out of 15 leads. I'm going to contract. Okay. And that does depend on where the lead came from.
Hmm.
But if I was doing what the gurus say, I mean, I would have to have probably it'd be likely a 1 out of 100, maybe 1 out of 200 to go to contract. That's really what they're pitching. Well, why not take a little bit more time to learn how to actually talk to people? And now you don't have the marketing expense every month.
Mm-hmm.
You can deal with a lot less leads if your closing ratio is better.
Right.
You're not using as much of your time. So that goes back to the vision. How much time do I want to be involved in my business? I don't want to take 100 calls a week or a month. That when I was saying that before, that was a month, not a week. 10,000 pieces to bring in 100 leads in a month. But I don't want to take 100 calls in a month. I want to take 10, maybe 20
Mm-hmm.
if I can close a
Mm-hmm.
deal one out of 20, right? But my marketing budget can be way less. And all I'm really saying is you just need to learn how to talk to people. But nobody pitches this. Nobody talks about why, because it's not sexy. It's hard to sell, right? I can say to Patrice, listen, Patrice, you give me $10,000 and I'll teach you how to wholesale. Or I say to Patrice, you give me $10,000 and I'll teach you how to talk to people. Which one sounds more exciting? Right? Patrice is smiling. She knows which one.
Oh, I don't have $10,000. That's why I'm laughing.
Well,
I'm like,
Get
man, I
creative.
wish I did.
well, you can wish in one hand and no, I'm not going to finish that. Patrice, if you knew how to talk to people, do you agree that you could potentially find somebody that did have $10,000 that would be willing to invest in you
Yeah,
and, and
definitely.
and thereby now you can go out and start investing?
Yeah, definitely.
Right. So people talk about I don't have money to get started or I don't have this, I don't have that. It doesn't cost a whole lot other than time to learn how to negotiate. But again, it's not a sexy topic. So the wholesale guru is going to say, make 10 grand a month, you'll get your first check within 30 days or what, right? We've all seen these for years. My spiel is you still need to learn the process and know how to do it, but you can cut back significantly when you actually know how to talk to people. So I'll quit preaching now, Kyle.
No. This is all. I love all of it. I just want to quickly show. I do. I love all of it. I just want to say that because one of the questions I have is any lead a bad lead,
No,
right?
not if you have your end goal in mind at all times, there's no lead that
Hmm.
that is a bad lead. As I described earlier, the
Sure.
guy we contacted each other to buy a house. I knew we weren't going to buy a house. Well, in the back of my mind, I'm flipping it to what's my next goal. My
Right.
next goal may be just getting a referral. It may
Right.
be raising private money. It may be whatever. So, and it doesn't have to take another hour on the phone. It took 5 more minutes.
Right.
How
So
many no's do you typically need to have, Derek, before you're like, okay, this is a bad lead, this is a waste of my time? Like,
Well,
how many
some
times do you have to hear no or like be rejected?
well, no means not yet, first of all.
Good answer.
Which is also literally the name of my negotiations course that I do teach people with. So it's called No Means Not Yet. Um, and sometimes I'm the one saying no. Sometimes in the first few minutes, I'm like, you know what, Angie, from what you just described to me, I
Mhm.
am not your best option. And I have no problem telling you that because
mhm.
I'm not here to waste your time. If you can do
Mhm.
better for your family, you should sell to somebody else.
Yeah, no, and
Cool.
I appreciate that as a customer or as
Right.
someone because that tells me you're listening to me, what I need. And if you're not going to like rip me off or make me feel like I'm being taken advantage of,
Mhm.
if you're just being direct with me about it.
Right. Now,
Yeah.
to answer your question directly, Angie, how many times do I have to hear no? It depends on the conversation. If they're saying no to my offer, that means I have not yet overcome their objections. Okay, there's a difference between a concern and an objection. A concern
Mhm.
isn't going
Mhm.
to really change their mind if they're going to do business with me or not. But if they have objections that have not been overcome, they're not moving forward with me until those objections are overcome.
Right.
So if they keep saying, no, I have not done a good enough job yet, and I have to circle back and find out what is your true objection, Angie, and solve that. And that I do through storytelling
Okay.
primarily.
Derek, one of my favorite things that I started utilizing last year, I'd say in 2024 was the concept of the bench. And frankly, I can't remember who gave me that idea. But when opportunities come your way, and maybe the timing's not right, and this is both with people have asked me for things, or if I'm asking somebody else and I'm not quite ready, I'll say, can you put me on your bench, right? Like, hey, you're putting something together. I've got this going on currently. I'm not in that position to do that, but put me on your bench. And if you got something else that comes your way, give me a call when that comes up, right? And what I just love about that is that you can ask to be taken off the bench too, right? So at the law firm here, if I'm exploring options for things that we need for technology or something like that, and maybe I'm learning about some new software, I might say, all right, well, look, we're not going to do that this quarter, but maybe next quarter or, some 90 days from now, give me a call, put me on your bench, right? That keeps that conversation going, right? I'm interested in it. Like you said, it's no, which really means not yet, right? Now there might be a point where not yet becomes a solid no, right? We don't need it. The problem's been solved. Um, but and by that point, maybe that relationship has just, evolved and transformed into something else too, which is also neat. And it just kind of gets back to the heart of what you're saying is communicating with people, having honest conversations that are open and honest. And you just kind of know if they're not right. You can feel that. Derek, for you, I want to know kind of what is the purpose behind all of it. And what I mean by that is, so one of the things that I discovered here, I've been practicing law now 19 years. It took me a little bit more than half my way in to realize that what I was really passionate about was family law, which are things involving families, divorces, child custody, child support. The first half of my career as a lawyer, um, the idea of family law clients at our law firm, Open and Honest Guys, was boy, it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. Why are we doing these cases? And frankly, kind of a negative attitude. It was these clients are a pain in the ass.
Mhm.
That was the attitude. And I was young and I was like, yeah, okay, all right, and didn't place a lot of value on it. And then one day I just kind of got sick of hearing that. And I was like, wait a second. At its core, I like to help people. I like to listen to people. I like to help them solve their problems. I'm a lawyer. If I understand the law and how to help them solve their problems, I should welcome every family law client that calls and asks for my help, right? And that helped really turn it around for me. So when we talk about leads in here, again, and in sales, right? Sometimes in the general world that comes across as kind of like, oh, it's bad. You're selling me something,
Fraud,
yeah,
scam, something
wrong. Are
like
you
that.
in this for the right purpose,
Yeah.
right? And, at the end of the day, this always for me, it comes back to love of the game and the money comes next. And you ask any NFL player when they retire, hey, if you could do it all over again, would you? Yeah, I would do it. I just love being in the locker room. I love to play the game, right? And yeah, they get paid a lot of money for it, but usually it's just because you love what you're doing and you love, in my case, helping people through this. So what is it for you, right? You're still fielding calls, very successful. I don't think we even have been able to touch on it yet, but very successful in a lot of things that you're doing. You're still taking leads. What is that passion? What's the real fire behind it, the purpose for you?
Well, I'm a deal junkie at heart. I love
Yeah.
the thrill of the kill, right? But I also feel an obligation, like, and I have other people that work for me. I don't take all the calls. So
Mm-hmm.
what I figured out early on was I don't want to take all the calls. I want to take the ones that are truly motivated.
Mm-hmm.
So my other people on my team, they're weeding out the trash because I don't want to do that. So just to clear that up. But
Sure.
I know that with what I've gone through, I can help people. I have the knowledge and the experience to help people, and I feel like that's what I'm supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
On the personal side, in 2007, when we lost everything, my wife and I also had challenges having a family. So my first daughter was in vitro, and it
Mm-hmm.
worked. And we tried in vitro several more times, and it didn't work. So then we decided to enter into an adoption program to adopt our son from China. And we were halfway through that program when I went broke. So picture
Wow.
yourself,
Wow.
you've already accepted a match to this little baby on the other side of the world, And now there's not a bank in the world that'll give you the money you need to pay for that. So the first time I raised private capital was to pay for the adoption of my son. Okay. Fast forward,
Wow.
um, before I brought my son home, my father passes away of cancer. And then, our whole financial world is crumbling, everything. Like, we had every reason to feel sorry for ourselves and all this crap.
Hmm.
And I still call all these things the greatest blessing or time in my life. So who would I be now today to sit here and with the experience I've got and not help people? Right? Because I had people that helped me back then.
Right.
I had people that put their faith in me, and I'm telling a banker, listen, I'm upside down $3 million. Believe me, I'm going to fix this.
Wow.
And he
Yeah.
did. He believed
Hmm.
me. He worked with me for years. I still work with that same bank. I run a ton of money through that bank every month. I don't borrow from them. I got a ton of stuff that goes through on deposits, right? So my drive today, it's really that. I know if I help enough people and I do it for the right moral and ethical reasons,
Hmm.
that I will make a decent living wage to raise my family and
Derek,
live my life.
when you're in that gap like that, and you're, as you said, $3 million, you had like 8 foreclosures, you're in that gap, right? How did you get into the game? How did you see yourself getting out of this? What daily things did you do to remind yourself that your experience today is not what it's going to be in the future? How did you stay elevated?
I honestly, I don't have a straight answer for you. I was raised by parents that, you don't quit.
Yeah.
You do whatever it takes. I was at rehab projects because early on I was a buy and hold guy. Well, then I had to fix and flip because I needed chunks of cash to just rob from Peter to pay Paul. I'm just trying to keep alive, right? Keep my nose above water.
Hmm.
And so I would work my full-time job. I was on a rehab project every night, every weekend. I pulled a lot of all-nighters. I'd just sit down in a dirty floor and sleep for an hour and get back up. I literally missed the first 3 years of my oldest daughter's life because I was gone all the time. And my wife, she was right there at my side, like whatever it takes. And with the passing of my father at that time, I knew that I didn't want to disappoint him. And so said, we're going to do whatever it takes. Um, but
Betting
man,
on yourself, man, that's crazy.
it was fueled by caffeine, nicotine, and Doritos most of the time. But
Uh,
you just, I don't know. It's what made me who I am today.
All right, let's do some sharing here. This is where you can connect with Derek on LinkedIn. Derek, do you use LinkedIn to connect with people?
I do. Full disclosure, my VAs monitor it. So,
All right,
yes, everything gets seen, but that there's hook up with me there. Um, pretty
I've got
much
got you over here on Facebook. I'm going to add you as a friend here. Patrice will make sure that this makes its way into the chat as well, so people can find you on LinkedIn and Facebook. I know,
if you want a super easy way, Kyle,
yeah.
you can just go to derekdombeck.com and there'll be links at the bottom to connect. So,
And what can we find? I'll pull that website up. Derek, what are you working on mostly right now? What would you say are really your passions now, and the things that you want to see, effective for you in the next 10 years?
well, I just as recently as yesterday, 2 days ago, we had a meeting with an SEC attorney, and yesterday another colleague of mine, we're opening up a fund, and it's going to be multifaceted fund that we're going to do venture capital deals out of. But what I love doing more than anything is options, and so this fund is going to be one of the facets of it is going to be to buy and hold options, um, mostly in Wisconsin, but I've got some other opportunities that I'm looking at. So the problem with options for myself, just you can tie up your own cash and they may not pay off for 5 years, 10 years, right? So properly structuring a fund, raising money, going out and holding options is definitely in the short term and long term goals. Um, as far as generations of wealth, I do my weekly podcast. I get to interview fantastic people from all over the United States in multiple different genres. I mean, mostly real estate investing, but I do bring in other people that have some different backgrounds for different perspectives. And I love that. I want to keep growing the generations of wealth family. And, you know, I'm a real estate junkie. And one of the things and one of the reasons that I'm no longer business partners with my former partner is we had different visions for where we wanted to go. So totally amicable, not some big bad bloody divorce, but having our visions figured out also told us we had different visions. And
Mm.
and so
Hmm.
I we did not hold as much real estate as I wanted to. We were doing a ton of lending, and most of the real estate that I was doing was being flipped. So I'm pushing the big 5-0 this coming year, and I want to start holding more assets for the long-term wealth.
Nice. So I have a number of questions in there, and guys, if you have questions, put them in the chat. Jump into the conversation here for sure. We've got time definitely to get into some of these things. So I want to just touch on the fund. If you could tell us that. Some folks in here might not be familiar with what that means. Buy and hold options. Give us a general overview of what that means.
Well, I mean, do you guys understand how options work? If we just start at the basics.
I think start at the basics is kind of what I'm saying, if you
Okay.
could.
Yeah. So when you have an option to buy somebody's property, that is an obligation for the seller to sell to you, but you have the right to not exercise that option in the future and buy from them. Which, by the way, every purchase contract, WB11 or any other purchase contract, and I know Sean has said this, and I've said this for years, any purchase contract that has any kind of an escape clause, by definition, is an option. It's saying the seller has to sell to you, but due to this clause, an inspection clause, I can back out.
Mm.
So if you think of an
Hmm.
option just like a purchase contract, that's really what it is. So I'll just tell you about one that I did. Quick story. I had a gentleman who I was approached by his daughter. He was losing his property to a tax foreclosure. He owed $4,500 in back real estate taxes. And it was D-Day. I mean, I literally had to go to the courthouse with cash. They would not accept any other form of
Mm.
payment. That day was the day he was losing his property. This is a 2-acre parcel up by Minocqua with an unfinished cabin on it and not really great, right? At the time, this was 5 years ago. At the time, it was probably worth $60,000-$70,000. And there was one lien holder ahead of the tax foreclosure, or well, not ahead of, but included with the tax foreclosure, which was another attorney that had done some legal work for him and never gotten paid. And the attorney didn't have the heart to foreclose against this guy, which, attorneys, they're all so full of heart, right, Kyle?
Always,
And,
always.
and so to clear that debt, when I exercise my option, and to pay the taxes, my strike price, which is my purchase price, is $18,000. So I have 10 years to buy that property for $18,000 minus what I've already given them, which was 4,500. Okay. Side note, I did this with my solo 401k, which I love doing in my retirement accounts with options. Well, what do you think his objection might be? He doesn't want me to exercise that option. This is his home. So I said, for the first 2 years, you can buy my option back. I cannot exercise it for 2 years, and you can buy it back if you double my money within
Mm.
2 years. What kind of rate of return is that? Well, if he does it exactly at 2 years, that's a 50% rate of return. If he does it sooner, it's a higher yield. And this isn't a high dollar thing, right? That's the beauty of it. It's $4,500. So, but I have terminology in there. If he doesn't pay his real estate taxes, or he, gets a foreclosure starts against him, I can exercise immediately. So I have not done anything with that option, and he has not done anything to buy it back for me. So we're at about the 5 year mark right now. Okay. What do you think has happened to that property in the last 5 years in a stone's throw of Minocqua with 2 acres and a cabin?
Yeah, it's a good
You
option for you. That thing has gone up in value.
you think it's worth a little more than 60 or 70 grand at this point?
I would say so. Yeah,
Okay. Did I have to pay any taxes? Did I
yeah,
have to have insurance on the property? Did I have to do it? No. Who gets all the upside?
you
I do,
do. Yeah.
right? I have no desire to exercise that option because this guy's daughter was my child's babysitter and she asked us to help her dad. And quite frankly, I'm going to let him live there till he dies. If we get to the end of my 10 years, I'm going to go renegotiate and say, I'll give you more time. Um, but the guy's a raging alcoholic, and I'm surprised he's lived this long. I don't want him to die, but that's just the facts. So let's just say we get to 9.5 years, and that property is arguably worth $150,000, and I have to pay $13,500 to exercise my option. Do you think that's a good idea or not?
I mean, it certainly could be. I mean, it depends on what you're looking for at the time. I think what you're, what station you're at in life.
Yeah, it's a trick question, right? I mean,
Yeah, it's
the
circumstantial,
answer is yes or no, whatever is
right?
best for you. What if I don't want to exercise the option because I don't have the heart to do it?
Hmm.
But do I have to wait it out, or should I just exercise it, or maybe I should just sell that option to Angie? And
Hmm.
Angie's heartless;
Hmm.
she can go exercise the option,
Sure,
right?
I'll let it
right.
play out. I'll let it play out.
You will. So, Angie, would you be interested in buying this option from me,
Uh,
and then you wait the next 4 or 5 years? Would you be interested in that?
no,
Why not?
because I don't feel like dealing with the raging alcoholic situation. But maybe, if you didn't tell me that, I would say yes.
Okay. See, what you're not asking, Angie, is what is that going to cost
To
okay,
what? Like,
to buy the option?
well,
Okay.
honestly, like if we're role playing, I would say yes. But in reality, I can't afford it right now.
Oh, we don't use the word can't in my house, number
Oh,
one. So
okay.
stop that. Number two,
Noted.
number two, the point I'm trying to make is that option is currency. Okay. I can sell that option, I can trade that option,
Hmm.
I can exercise that option and actually buy the property, but it's currency,
The option has options.
100%.
Yeah.
And I can sell, just like selling notes, I can sell part of my option. I could say, you know what, Angie, I'll bring you in on this. I'll give you 50% of the option if you give me $10,000. Okay. So you don't even have to deal with this raging alcoholic. I'm just saying, I got $4,500 into it right now. You give me 10,
Hmm.
you get half of the option when we exercise. I get half of the option. What did I do? I got all my money back, plus I got a little extra spending money in my retirement account. And now we're partners.
Right.
And we could go exercise right now, or we could decide to ride it out. So that's one way we could do it. I could go to Kyle and say, Kyle, I'd like to borrow some money. And you're like, well, okay, but I'm not going to borrow you money that's not secured. Kyle, I got this option on this property that's worth 100+ thousand dollars.
Hmm.
Would you be willing to lend me 50 grand secured by an option that's worth this?
Yeah.
Sure.
If I was interested in it, I might. Yeah. Right.
Right.
For sure.
So
It has value. It has value to the
absolutely.
right. It just got to, who does it have value to, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So options are beautiful because there are no rules. It is quite literally
Hmm.
whatever you and the other party agree to and come up with.
Hmm.
Okay. I did another option deal on a house that I flipped. And sometimes sellers just won't take your cash offer. They're stuck on they want more money. I said, okay, this guy wanted $150,000 for his house. He was retiring, he was moving to South Dakota, and he literally wanted to move within a week of retiring from his job because he had a girlfriend out there. Um, and he didn't want to deal with listing the property, fixing anything up, going through inspections. It was the
Hmm.
fall of the year, so snow was going to be coming. And the after repair value on his house was 200 grand all day long. And he
Mm-hmm.
says, I need to get 150. I said, okay, why don't we do this? I will take a 6-month option on your house to give you 150 grand. And when you get an option, there's what's called option consideration. Okay. So I'm paying something to this person to get the right to buy the property in the future. But what do you think that normally is? Normally it'd be cash. Do you think it has to be cash?
You're talking about the 150K?
No, the 150K is my price, my
Mm-hmm.
option price when I
Mm-hmm.
exercise. But up front, there needs to be some consideration. Why would he
Right.
give me this option, right? Most of
Mm-hmm.
the time they want something, right? So oftentimes they want money,
Mhm.
but it doesn't have to be money. So in this case, I gave him $0, and my option consideration was I'm going to rent the house from you. So we used a lease, and I'm going to maintain or improve the property at my expense and at my disclosure,
Mm-hmm.
or my discretion, I should say, um, until it sells. And if I don't exercise my option within the 6 months, you're going to have a house that you still own that's going to be in a better condition than it was on the day we signed the deal. And then I'm going to pay you rent. And he was a stickler on the rent. He really wanted his real estate taxes covered. So my rent was $200 a month on a 3-bedroom, 2-bath ranch house on 5 acres. Would you pay $200 a month in rent? I thought it was a pretty good deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, so my total money out of pocket day one was $200 for my first month's rent. We signed the papers. I went in, and in 5 days, we updated, renovated, cleaned, and put it on the market. And on day 6, we were under contract for $200,000.
Wow.
On
Wow.
day 34, from start to finish, I closed. He got his $150,000. The realtors got their commission. I pocketed $34,000 on that deal, and my total out of pocket was 1 month of rent at $200,
Mm-hmm.
the utilities for 1 month, and about $1,500 in materials and labor.
Wow.
So a $2,000 investment yielded 34 grand. Actually, I take it back. I misspoke. 32 grand in 34 days.
Wow.
But you
That's
were
excellent.
willing to live there and fork out $1,500. So,
So the lease was
and do
not
the
for
work.
me to live there. The lease was so that I had the right to occupy the space. For
Oh, so
me,
you
that
didn't have
lease
to
that
actually.
lease was for me to be able to be there and work on it. Um,
Hmm.
but okay, so it's a little more fun on that one deal.
For sure.
When you have the option, Kyle, cut me off if you need to, but
No, go
when
ahead.
you have the option, well, I need to exercise the option and buy the house from him and then resell it, right? That's called a double close. Common in what we do, can be done. When is that a challenge? When my end buyer is using banks, specifically when my end buyer is using FHA loans, VA loans, anything that has seasoning requirements. We can't double close. Okay. So when I have a lease option, and this is going to be a little bit fun with Kyle, I think. When I have a lease option, there's 2 things I require. Now, most of the time, if you had an option, you would go and do what with that option on public record? You would record it, right? You would cloud the title with the option so that they couldn't go and sell it to anybody else. Well, I actually have them pledge a mortgage to secure that option, and the mortgage gets recorded.
Mm. Okay.
Kyle, why do you think that would be important?
I would think that's going to give you a little bit more flexibility on selling the property, would be my assumption if I'm thinking about that off the bat. But I don't know. I could be wrong.
Anybody else have any thoughts? No. Okay. Well, if if I'm buying the house or I have an option to buy a house, and for some reason that seller decided to sell it out from under me to somebody else. And for some reason, the title company, either the option never was recorded or the title company misses the option. And it does, in fact, get sold. What's my
The mortgage
recourse?
option you're talking about, if that's missed.
If I didn't have a mortgage, if I just did what 99% of people do, they get an option and they record the option.
Got it.
And somehow this seller sells it out from under me. I didn't know, and it actually closes. And now Angie owns the house.
Right.
Okay.
Yay.
Kyle, we'll make Kyle the bad guy. Kyle was the seller, and he gave me an option, and then he goes and sells it to Angie because he got more money from Angie.
Right.
And I didn't know, and it actually closed. Now Angie owns the house. What's my recourse against Kyle?
I mean, you would ask him what happened. Like, what happened to the deal?
He's not going to tell me what happened. He's not even taking my calls.
Well, I mean, if you
Right.
recorded it, then you would take him to court.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. You would take him to court.
Yeah.
And now you are in court in a lawsuit arguing contract law. Okay. Even assuming I win, which I should, right? I mean, there's title company to go after for title insurance. I should win. Okay. Am I ever going to get them to reverse that sale to Angie?
No.
Yeah.
No. I'm going to get a money judgment against Kyle. And now it's my obligation to go collect on the money judgment, which may or may not happen, but I'm never getting that house. Now, let's say that Kyle pledged a mortgage securing the option, and we recorded the mortgage. And the same thing happens. Kyle's a snake. He sells it to Angie. Okay. Well, I'm not going to contract law court. I'm going to foreclosure court. And I'm taking the property away. And I'm going to take that property away from Angie. And now what's Angie going to do? She's the one suing Kyle for not, being a snake.
Right.
Okay. So that's one of the main reasons I record a mortgage to secure an option. The second reason is, and it's not that maybe Kyle intended to do anything wrong. Maybe Kyle passes away and Patrice is Kyle's heir. And Patrice doesn't want to let me exercise my option. Okay, great. Sorry, Patrice, I'm going to foreclose and take it away from you, and you may not get anything at that point. We'll see. But here's where it's on the fun side. Like, nobody did anything shady. It's great. Let's go back to the selling scenario. I want to sell this property, but if I buy it and resell it in a double close, my buyers using FHA, it won't go through underwriting. So I get power of attorney as part of these transactions, and I actually list the property as POA for the owner of record, and I get my option paid out as a mortgage payoff on the HUD. And what's my payoff? It's the net profit after everybody gets paid. That's my payoff. So when it's going through FHA underwriting, they see, oh, Derek's got a mortgage on a property. Okay, what's his payoff? Makes sense. So that is the two major reasons I do it that way. So you kind of asked what was coming up. I want to start doing that on a much larger scale and holding options on property, land in the path of progress. People losing their houses to foreclosure, I can go catch up their payments. They can keep their house. I can have an option on their house for the next 10, 20, 30 years. Sky's the limit. So that's the goal.
Derek, just have a couple minutes here. So guys, here's Derek's website, derekdombeck.com. We've also put that in the chat. Check that out. Tell us about Generations of Wealth. Derek, what is this all about? And I see you got a t-shirt and a hat.
Yeah, it's my uniform. Generations of Wealth. It's if you see our slogan in there, is live your vision, love your life. That's really what it is. I bring on people on my podcast specifically to just bring value to people. We've established a mastermind years ago that we do. Now we've pared it down to 2 groups, but each group goes on 2 retreats a year. Plus we have monthly calls. And what that is a peer-to-peer mastermind. We just hosted one in Dominican Republic last week where I rent this private 3-acre beach villa with a nice chef and security and everything else. And we literally just hang out and have time to work with each other. Right. And
Nice.
this is not just business. This is
Yeah.
your entire life. Like, unfortunately, we have a member whose wife is currently pregnant and had some very bad news on an ultrasound
Mm.
last week while he was there and his wife
Mhm.
was at home. And to see everybody in that group, there was 19 of us there, everybody just pour into him
Right.
and be there for him. And so that's a lot of it. That's called the circle of trust, our mastermind. And beyond that, it's just generations of wealth is just kind of a, I'd love to call it a movement. It'll probably never be a movement, but it's really designed to be that, just helping people based on the experiences I've been through.
Nice, guys. If you're on Facebook or live in the room here, definitely check out the website. Check out Generations of Wealth. There's a lot there. Patrice, we're going to have to kindly ask Derek, manipulate him to get back on the episode
Well, if
again.
anybody can
Our,
manipulate me, it's
yeah,
Patrice. That I
your
know.
words, not ours, right? But
Thank you.
joking with you. But if we can get Derek back here, certainly, and continue to have conversations. In my opinion, Derek, this was one of the deeper discussions we had on some of the how-tos. Since I've been having conversations with people here since 2021, which was really excellent to get into that and get it, kind of underneath the hood a little bit and kind of see how some of these deals might work. And I think it should just prompt anyone here who's thinking about these things to start digging a little bit deeper, asking the questions, reading the book, listening to the podcast, go to Derek's website. Derek, as we kind of part ways here, the value of the network to you, the mastermind, can you just explain that to us kind of as a, if we were to wrap up here, because you talked about that at the beginning. If it wasn't for my network, I wouldn't have got this. I wouldn't have got there. And now you have a mastermind. So it's you had the network, now it sounds like you're giving back. Tell us more about that.
To me, the mastermind is the culmination of everything that I talked about all day long, because it's lonely at the top, right? And at, all of us get to the top at some point. So I started Central Wisconsin RIA years ago, and then subsequently we merged with Wisco RIA. And I love my people at my RIA. I go there and I answer questions, I teach, but I don't have anybody to talk to about my next level or my
Mm-hmm.
challenges, right?
Right.
And that's where the masterminds come in. If you're in the right mastermind, and they're not all created equal, and there's different purposes for different masterminds. Ours is very vision, based. So some masterminds, you have to do a certain amount of business before they'll even let you in.
Right.
Personally, for me, I ask you to say, well, Angie, what's your goal? We're going to help you get to your goal. I'm not going to tell you, Angie, you should be, doing 50 deals a year. No, because if that 50 deals a year means you're working 7 days a week and it's destroying your health, wealth, and family life, who am I to tell you
Less
that?
is more
Right.
sometimes,
Absolutely. And it
as
can
long
be
as
if
the
that's
less is
if that's
more
what you want in
value.
your, yeah, if that's what you want in your vision, it absolutely can be.
Mm-hmm.
And for some people, they want the big fancy business. But so the masterminds in and of themselves, that's what really escalated me to where I am. It's having those people to call, regardless of if it's personal or business. And it, so 2020, when most people were panicking, we were just all, reaching out to each other for months. And
Mm-hmm.
most of the people in my
Right.
network, that was the best year they'd had in business to date.
Right.
So it's having that background, or that, not background, that the people behind you to support you.
All right, Derek. Well, thanks for joining us today. The time has gone by. I can't believe we're already done here for this week's Meaningful Ideas Trading Club. But as always, guys, I'm super grateful to have you come in and be supportive of this program and supportive of Derek and what he's doing and learning from him, and Derek, you giving to us. And for all of those of you out there on Facebook as well, thanks for tuning in live. Of course, we'll be putting these sessions on our YouTube channel, so make sure to check that out as we build that up. Derek, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to getting to know you more. And hopefully we can connect at some RIAs. We can connect offline and see how we can help each other and help other people. So I just really appreciate your time. Thank you.
100%. Glad to be here. And anything I can do to help any of you, don't hesitate to reach out.
All right,
Right.
great. All right, guys, that's MITC for this week. And let's see, next week we are back, and 2 weeks from now we'll be off, just so you guys are aware of that, but we'll be back next week. We'll see you then. Thanks.